Hello and welcome to the BI WizKid YouTube channel. I'm so excited to share with you this Power BI dashboard design masterclass. So what are we doing exactly? Well, in this video, I'm going to take an existing Power BI report created by another developer. I'm going to analyze it, break it down, and then completely redesign it into a stunning showcase dashboard. You'll be amazed at how simple it is to create a stunning dashboard. Along the way, I'll share with you my key design principles that I use in pretty much every report I create, and ones that you can share and use in your own reports. And if that wasn't enough, in this video, I'm going to share with you the complete process and take you through step by step on how I created this particular dashboard. Are you ready for this? I'm ready for this. Let's go. Hashtag boom. So, we're here on our existing report. So this was the report that was developed by another developer. And this company, they asked me to come in and said, look, we've started using Power BI. We've got this far. We've started to put visuals on pages. We've started to bring in our data, but now we need to take it to the next level. We really need to sell this to the business. And we need a really sort of high quality showcase dashboard to get the buy-in from the business. And not just the business, it could be that you want to use this as a demo product or you want it to use it as a sales tool. Creating a showcase dashboard really will put you sort of above the rest of the pack. Now, you've seen the sort of beginning. What we're looking to get to is this. We're looking to get to this sort of dashboard at the end of it, and we're going to go through step by step on exactly how I created it. Okay, so let's start our existing report, and in this particular one, I'm going to use bookmarks. So I've actually created bookmarks to go through the whole process, and so I've enabled my bookmarks, and we're going to take step by step through the individual bookmarks. This is the first landing page, so this is the report that they've got, and it's page 1. They've also got a detail page, which is this one here. So this shows a detailed breakdown of the data as well. Okay, so the first step that I take is to give everything a traffic light, especially if this is being developed by somebody else. I try and give it a traffic light system to say what's good, what's bad, and what could be improved, what's okay. And so all the red spots around here, you can see that are the ones that I don't think are great and ones that I potentially need to change. The one on the left hand side here, we can see that it's a chart, but it's got no title, it's got no data labels, it's got nothing around it. I've no idea when looking at that what that is. So that's a complete red, and that needs to be dealt with straight away. The next thing we've got is these two visuals here. So we've got two visuals here, and this is one of the things that you need to look at. So they've tried to use a sort of symmetry type of view here, which is nice if it works, but it looks like this data doesn't really work with this type of visual. The tree maps I don't particularly like anyway, and I don't think there's much use for them, and in this instance it just definitely doesn't work. I can't see exactly what they're trying to show. It could be that there's some bottlenecks in there somewhere. It looks like there's a big piece here and a big piece there, and the rest are a bit small, which if you show that in a sort of, I guess, a funnel or a pipe, you could see the sort of pipeline, you can see the sort of bottlenecks that are appearing and where they're appearing, etc. So those two visuals there I think need to change. I've also put a red up here because it's got a filter over here on the right hand side, but then it's got filters on the left hand side. Now, having filters in one area is probably key, because you don't want to have different filters in different places, because it'll sort of, it's not a good experience for the user, and remember, we want to make it a good experience for the end user as well. So I've put a red spot over there because that needs to really move with the other filters on the left hand side there. That's the red spots. When we've got the yellow spots here now, I'm not really sure what this is trying to show in terms of the data wise, so we'll have a look at that and see what we can do with those, but it might be the same sort of data that's in these other visuals underneath here. Now we've got a couple of trends down here, so you can see that it's got a trend down here, which is nice. Well, I'd say nice, but we could probably improve that and have a better visual for that data. And including this one as well, you can see it's just new numbers along a number of different rows and columns, and again, probably needs to be looked at and updated to a different type of visual. Now at the bottom here we've got our data table, which data tables are okay. I don't mind a data table, which I've left it as a green. but perhaps that's better used on the detail page rather than the main landing page. And at the top here, you know, I like the introduction, I like a title, and I think they've got a departmental icon here, which, you know, it sort of makes it personal to them. So that's great. So I've included that and I've left that as a green as well. So that's step one for the dashboard review. Now let's review the detail page as well. Now they've got two line charts here. Now two line charts, generally line charts I think are better used for trends and trends over time, whereas here there's no time analysis and there's no real sort of trend that's being shown here, so that it's really using the wrong visual for the data. Again, we've got a split of sort of slices at the top here, but slices in different places, and again a visual here that perhaps could be improved to show the data a bit better. And the only thing I guess is good is that it is a detail page, so you do want a breakdown of the detail on there, which is great. Okay, so that's the first step in sort of reviewing an existing dashboard, to really sort of understand what you're going to change, what you're going to keep, and what really you need to focus on when you're designing your report. Okay, let's go to the next step. I'm just going to go to the next bookmark. So we're going to start with a completely blank canvas, and I'll show you exactly what I do when I start a report. So the first step I do is obviously put in a logo for myself, and I put in the title, and that just really cordons off an area that we can then use for, you know, data, you know, last refresh dates, you know, logos for the companies, introductions and that sort of thing. So really sort of mark that territory out from the get-go, so you don't really forget about that. Okay, the next step is to create an actual canvas. Now yes, Power BI has its own canvas, but you've probably, if you're a developer or designer, you've probably noticed that when you try and click in certain places, you want just some white space just to click on, you know, just to be able to not click on a particular visual or a particular icon. You want some white space. So, you know, creating a canvas for yourself and making sure you stay within that canvas is quite key actually. Then you always got the outside to then use as white space. Okay. The next step is then to break that down into individual icons or individual sort of shapes, and I've just used the sort of basic shapes that you can get in Power BI, the rectangle shapes, to create these areas here. Now this for me comes from a really sort of tool that Microsoft used to use back in the day called Performance Point. When you created a dashboard with Performance Point, you were always forced to use an actual, you know, rows or columns of sections, and I guess that's sort of filtered through for me, and it worked really well in terms of sort of keeping the data, you know, quite aligned. And that's a key thing as well. Alignment is really key in reports. You know, not everything has to align, but as long as you have certain things that align in the report, really will make it work and really will make it stand out. Okay, the next thing is to label each area. Okay, so understand what are you going to put into each of these areas. So I'll put a label into each of these areas. So I'll say, okay, we're going to have a couple of charts there at the top, then we're going to have a KPI, I've got an intro section here, I've got a couple of charts over there, another chart in the middle, and then a KPI at the bottom as well. And this is taking all the data that was in the existing report and trying to sort of create it into a better layout and a better flow in this particular report, because we want the report to tell a story and want it to flow really nicely as well. Okay, so once we've done that, we can then start putting our data in. So the first thing is to create some KPIs. Okay, now the KPIs don't need to be the actual KPI visuals that you get in Power BI. They can be just simple card visuals and simple text boxes, and use the space that's available here. So this is your real estate that you've got in and around this home safety checks completed. So this tells us home safety checks are completed 33,250. Percentage of contact made within 7 days, 85% of those home safety checks have been contacted within 7 days, and then 80% of those were completed within 28 days. So these are the key main KPIs that you want to hit the user with straight away, and some of the main KPIs that users will want to see, especially looking at the current dashboard. Now I've used the space sparingly here, and there are some gaps around here, but if you wait till later on, I'll show you what I'm going to do with those gaps as well. Okay, so the next step in this is to bring in some charts. Okay, now these charts here are the charts that we saw in the first graph here, where they used a tree map. Now, I mentioned that there might be some bottlenecks, and you can see here now that this breaks down the 33,000 home safety checks, and it breaks them down into the contact made. Okay, so if I go to the next step, you can see I've put a title in there. Okay, so 7-day customer contact SLA. So within 7 days, you can see that 26,000 were contacted within 3 days, and within 7 days, another 1,371. So we can clearly see, whether we hit that SLA or whether the company hit that SLA or that target. And then if we move along to the other side, we can see how many were actually completed within 28 days, and we can see that KPI broken down there as well. Now, if we just go back to the existing one, we can see that this is what they were trying to show in these two visuals here. Okay, now you can see that they were just completely using the wrong visual for that type of data, and it's key to understand that, it's key to understand the data and understand how it can best be used in the visuals at hand. A lot of people want things to look pretty, they want things to look nice, but they need to be useful, and they need to be understandable, they need to be relatable. And this is what we need to think about when we're creating reports. We don't need to overcomplicate our visuals. Excuse me. We just need to make sure that the data that's being shown needs to be shown to the user straight away, so they understand exactly what's going on. So we can see exactly straight away that the majority of contact takes place within the first 3 days, and then the completion of those takes place the majority of the time within the first 7 days as well. Okay, so that's the first step. Now notice the titles that I've done here as well. So I've created just simple titles, but I've played with the titles as well. I'm using the same fonts and I'm using the same sizes, but I'm playing around with the sort of colors here just to break it up a little bit, because this is a showcase dashboard and we want to wow the customer. We want to wow the people that we're presenting this to. So we want to make sure that we just do something different and not keep it sort of plain Jane and keep it simple. We want to sort of be a bit more extravagant. So play with the titles, but be consistent and also inconsistent at the same time. Okay. Moving on to the next step, adding in another KPI, another visual here. So this breaks down our safety check. So each home safety check that's carried out is labeled no risk, low risk, medium, high, or very high. And we can see here that all these are broken down simply into this area here. And already if we click on the low risk ones, we can see the breakdown. Okay, 7,876 no risk items. It took us 3 days to contact, and then the majority of those, we can see there's a big overspill into over 35 days there. But this is what this type of thing that users want to see. They want to see, okay, well, let's focus on the very high ones. What happened with those? Have a look at the SLAs around those, and then there's a flow, there's a story that's already starting. Just by clicking on a few of these visuals, the user can quickly then understand, okay, well, all my very high risk statuses, this is how they start off, that's how they finish, and our SLAs around that are pretty good. They're nearly up to the 90s. Okay, but again, they can go through each of these statuses and try and understand actually what's happening and how that's happening as well. Okay, so it's important to understand and make sure that these visuals and this data relates to each other as well, because the analysis comes when users start to click around, and they start to click around the various items here. So if we click on this item here, 1,371 items, we can see that 100% obviously was made within that time because we're clicking that item, but 97% of those were actually completed within the right time scale as well. And the breakdown of the sort of risk statuses, we can see, okay, well, 97 was complete time because they were all maybe low risk. Okay, let's have a look at the ones that were maybe high risk and see if there's any difference there. So now we look at the high risk ones, you can see that only 20% of those were actually completed in time, and you can see that overspills over time as well. And you can see that instead of low risk, there's also no risk ones that have appeared in there as well. So again, it's telling a story. Each step of this way is telling a story about what's happening with each of these home safety checks that are carried out. Okay. So down here you can see that we've got a KPI. We've got a key KPI that's appeared down here. Now this revisit rate is a percentage of how many properties are revisited. Now if we, for example, someone comes and looks at my property and says, okay, this is very high risk, then I expect them to come back in a month to see if any changes have been made, if I've made any improvements to make that less of a risk. Okay, and that's a revisit rate here. Okay, So that's a good KPI and a key KPI for the end user as well for this particular scenario. The next step is to add in a trend. So we noticed in the first dashboard that there was a couple of trend graphs or charts that they had where they were looking at how many trends for the different risk statuses over time, and there was a big scroll bar. But what I've done here is place that into a nice sort of trend over time, and then obviously we've got the drill down to be able to drill down to the next level, to the individual day level if they want. So there's the ability to do that, which brings out the functions and features of Power BI, which again is something that you want to show the end user in a demo or in any sort of sales pitch going forward as well. Okay, so that's a great way to show that trend data, line graphs, and broken down into the various items as well. Now again, we've got this over here. So we've got a scatter graph. Now scatter graphs are great. I think scatter graphs are a really good way to really bring out data that you can't really see, to the naked eye. Now, if we start to click around here, so let's focus on the no risk items, you can see the sort of disparity in terms of number of home safety checks and how many were revisited. Okay, so as we go through the various steps, you can see the different clusters that appear in the different areas, and this is really interesting when you start analyzing, and when the user starts analyzing their own data. You can see the cluster from the low to the medium really sort of moves to a different area of the graph, and it's really interesting to sort of see how that moves along the different risk statuses that they've got here. Yeah, and you can see how the revisit rates change as per the various items as well. As you go lower, you can see the no risk ones are rarely revisited, and as you move up, you can see it gets higher, it gets higher, and it gets higher as well. Okay, and notice how the colors have sort of been used here as well. So how I've used the same color throughout the sort of various risk statuses here. So if I click on the low, you can see I've got the red line on the right hand side and the red dots on the left hand side. And if I click on the grey, I've got the grey dots and the grey line as well. This helps the picture in the user's mind as well. So we have to remember that we're building this for the end user, and we want them to be able to build up the picture in their mind really quickly, or as quick as possible, and for their brains to be able to process it. And color matching really helps that. And understanding, the data, the layout and the flow really works well with this as well. And if we click on the low, again, it tells us a story. We can look at the number of safety checks, we can look at the SLAs, we can look at the breakdown of customers 28 days, we can look at a trend over time to see if it's going up or going down. We can see the sort of revisit rates and the clusters that appear around there as well. So even though they're quite simple charts and graphs, the relationships between them really work, and the flow and the storytelling of the whole page at the moment really sort of stands out, and that's a key thing when designing and developing a report. And look at the symmetry as well. So we've got some symmetry appearing in the top part of the chart as well. So here we've got the two of the same graphs and charts, and really sort of stands out and makes things quite striking as well as this bottom half has made it quite symmetrical as well. If you split it in half, we've got the chart on the right, chart on the left, and sort of something in the middle just to split that up. Really sort of symmetrical sort of view as well, and again really nice and pleasing on the eye, especially when you sort of present this to end users as well. So we're almost there. We're filling in the last couple of places now. So the last area is to add in an overview. What is this report? What are we looking at? So home safety check referrals, analyzing patterns of home safety checks following a referral request. Okay, and again I've included that little icon that they had for their departmental, which I thought was quite nice, just to sort of brand it a little bit to them. Okay, now at this point we've sort of filled in all our areas, we've got all the data in there, we've redesigned it, we've put in put in graphs and charts in the right places, KPIs in there as well. So what's the next step in this? The next step is to simply remove the frame. Okay, so remove all the sort of squares and all the charts that you've got, and you're left with something that just looks really nice and really clean. Yeah. Now we could leave it as this, but we want to take it to the next level. We want to take it to another couple of levels here. So we want to work on this a little bit more. So what's the next step on this? The next step on this is to add a background. Okay, now I'm not talking about a really extravagant background that takes your focus away from the report. You know, we don't want a Ferrari car, we don't want, you know, a beach picture or anything like that. We just want something simple, something abstract, something that just adds an extra dimension to that particular report. Now you can see I've just put a nice distinctive grey abstract background that's there, and it adds an extra dimension, but it doesn't take your focus away from the rest of the sort of reports and charts and the data it's trying to show. Okay, now you can notice sort of that we've got the things like grid lines on some of the charts and lines here, just to sort of bring that you know, in front of the chart. But you could also put a white background on each of these charts as well, just to add a bit of background to those and have the background, I guess, in the background as such as well. So there's options to do that as well, but for this one I'm just going to keep it nice and clean. Okay, the next step in this particular one is to add these icons in, so infographics. So I mentioned earlier that there was something I wanted to add to this particular report. Now I've added infographics into these KPIs areas. Now this helps the user, again, build that picture up in the user's mind. So you've got images, you've got numbers, you've got text. Now all this helps a brain to quickly understand, okay, I know what I'm looking at, home safety checks, okay, contact, right, I see the icon. Now these icons can be things from the organization themselves. So if you go to your marketing department, for example, and say, look, can I get some icons from your website? Can I get some images? You know, applying those on the report will help the user understand and relate to that quicker than you know, not having it on there. So it gives them, builds that picture up in their mind, you know. So really, really good effect and really nice effects. Don't overpower it, don't have too much in there, but just enough just to give the user you know, a bit more you know, just an extra dimension to that particular report. Okay, and notice how they're still within the confines of those squares that I put in place as well, and I left a bit of space just to sort of put those in there, and you can see that they fit nicely in there as well. Okay, the next step is to add some breakdowns, okay, just some barriers. Now if we just go back a step, you can see I put in these grey lines, but if we go back a step, and you can see that this is more like I guess like an open plan office. So if you think of an open plan office where you've got department here, department there, all of them in an open plan and working together, you can imagine the noise, you can imagine people seeing each other, there's so much going on in different areas, you know. But what you want to do is just add a barrier just in between each of those departments, just to break it up a little bit. Yeah, so you've still got your sort of area to work within, you sort of got your personal space to work in, but you've got that ability to then still flow into the other departments and other areas. Similarly with the report here, we've put in the barriers here just to cordon off each of these visuals, just to give them all their own sort of personal space, but then still the ability to then just walk into and navigate through each of these reports, okay, and each of these sort of visuals. So really nicely sort of break it up. You don't need to put big borders and big, you know, hard borders around everywhere. You know, we're not you know, we're not Brexit or anything. We don't want hard borders anywhere. We just want you know, not Mexican walls or anything. We just want simple sort of borders, just to softly break up the area that we've got there. Okay, now this is another thing as well, alignment. I mentioned alignment earlier on. Now if you look how I've aligned things here, you can see the home safety and the titles, they're completely aligned along the same line here. Along the bottom again, the titles and the charts, they're aligned exactly the same as well. The visuals on the left hand side, the KPIs, I've aligned those as well, but nothing else aligns, and somehow it just works. Okay, having certain things on the dashboard that align and align to each other on certain levels will work, and try it out, even though not everything aligns. For example, you know, this chart in here doesn't align with anything, this chart on the right hand side doesn't align with anything, but certain things do, and it just helps the dashboard. Again, you know, visual effect of that dashboard really helps the users. Okay, now the next thing is to add in a flow. Notice how I've just put in some tiny little arrows just to help the end user, okay, because a user comes into a report, they're totally confused. First of all, sometimes they don't know what the report is. Well, they do in this one because I've got a nice title. They don't know how to navigate through the report. Well, now you do, because I've given you a nice little flow and little direction to flow into, and tell them what relates to each other and how to sort of navigate through the report, giving it a nice story to tell as well. And if you think about, I don't know, driving on an open road, if there's no signs, if there's no direction, nothing to tell you to go left and right, you're going to be confused. But as soon as you put some signs in there to say, yes, go left here, yes, go right there, up and down here, it becomes much easier, and you've become much calmer, and it's much more easier to understand and digest, which is what I've tried to do here, to give people a flow of information and how to navigate through the report. The next thing we want to add is something a bit special. So we want to take it to another level. And generally, when people come into reports now, they almost want reports to act like websites, right? And what do you get on a website? You get a navigation pane, right? So adding in a navigation pane just helps the user focus, their sort of visuals on certain areas or certain pages. And it could be that this mimics the website that this company has or this organization has, and having a navigation bar really helps to sort of navigate through. So you can change these and have hoverovers as well. Hover over this, press me, don't press me, go away. You can change and edit these, and this is a great way to sort of show users what's out of the possible with Power BI. So let's go into the safety detail, for example. And this gives us a view of the detail page. So this is the detail page that I created for this particular page as well. And notice again that I've used the same sort of principles here as well. And if you look at the breakdown, I use the same sort of grid, but I've broken the grid up in a slightly different way based on what sort of information was being shown. I've used the same areas for the KPIs. I've used a few infographics again here. I've sort of used consistent sort of titles and underlines, etc., just to make it sort of consistent throughout the report as well, because the last thing you want is to have completely different setup for a different page of the report. Okay, so if we go back to the home, okay, so navigation, again, a great way to do that. Okay, now another thing that was missing from the original report are the filters. Now I haven't left any pages, any space for any of the filters here. So what can I do here? Well, I'll tell you what I can do. I can put a show filters and a hide filters button here, which then allows the user to then added functions in Power BI, just to give them an extra, like, oh, actually I didn't know that was possible in Power BI. Clicking on the filters, it'll bring the filters up here. You can change the filters here. You can see how all the data updates, changes, and then you can close that back up. And they're now hidden away. So they're all in one place. They're all hidden away. They're not sporadic, and they're not here. They're not there. They're just all hidden away, just in one little area. And I think that's really key and really nice, just to have on a page. Really nice function, really nice feature to have on there as well. And like other things you can do, we know there's tooltip reports. So here we can have normal tooltips. We hover over this particular visual. We can see that there's a standard tooltip there, but let's go down over here to this particular one here and hover over here. Now I've got a quick view of the last 12 months of each of these risk statuses, just to give me an overview or a snapshot of some data that I've got in the background. And notice again how the colors match to each of these. So as I hover over, the color changes for the line graph, giving me a snapshot of the last 12 months, average days to contact, average days to complete. And again, notice the sort of titles that I've kept consistent there as well. Okay, so consistency is key. Okay, layout is key, alignment is key. And we've come to the end of this particular dashboard now, and this is our completed dashboard in terms of redesigning to something completely different. And you sort of notice the things that I sort of took on board here. So in terms of the alignment, I made sure things were sort of slightly aligned. I used consistency and inconsistency as well throughout the sort of reports. Symmetry is another key thing. So having things that sort of map each other or mirror each other in the report is great as well. Having those borders and having a sort of soft border around the sort of visuals is really nice as well. Infographics really help build up the picture in users' mind as well. Keeping things clean and simple, is really key as well, because you don't want to confuse the end user going into a report that's just got totally different visuals, tree map visuals, line charts that don't go with line data. Ensuring that you've got the right data for the right visual is one of the key things as well. So a number of sort of key design principles that you should keep in mind there when designing this particular report or report like this, and something that really sort of stick in someone's mind when you show them something like this. Okay, now just before we go, let's have a look at a couple of other examples that I've got here. So this is another existing report that was created this was actually created by me, but then I redesigned it when I came up with my new design principles, and I created it into something that looked like that. And again, you can sort of see how I've sort of used the infographics, I've used the layout, I've used the borders, I've used the flow, everything just to redesign that into something completely different, something really, really sort of striking. Okay. And again, this is another version. Now I mentioned about having a background. Now you can see in this one, it's got a background in the back, and it's quite an extravagant picture, but I've made the sort of canvas of the report opaque, so that it doesn't really affect the visuals of the report and doesn't take your focus away from the data that you're actually looking at. It's just something in the background that maybe the organization has, as their, images or what it might be. And this is a sort of breakdown of sort of human resources. Okay. Now this is another example, simple example here. So if you look at the left-hand type report there, where they've got sort of icons and top, and they've got visuals there, and all that's been done in this new one is just to break that up a little bit. Okay, so just understanding and just breaking that up and giving it an individual area. So we mentioned about giving space to visuals as well. So just giving each visual a space. They had the right data, it had it in the right place, but it just needed splitting up, and it just needed a bit of space just to give it a bit of space to breathe there as well. Okay, this is another one created for a Canadian company, and they wanted to understand their statistics around unemployment. And let's look at this. They wanted to look at the unemployment by province. They've got their average work hours, they've got their unpaid and unpaid overtime hours, paid overtime hours as well, and that's split by family type. Is it that certain family types, people who are married or single, who do more overtime or less overtime? And then in the middle we've got here, as it flows through, we've got the sickness days, so how many people take sort of sick days and sick weeks off as well, broken down by the various sort of age groups. And then in the scatter graph on the right hand side, I've brought those two together. So is there a correlation between people who do overtime and take sickness? So is it that people who work so much overtime tend to have more sickness days off? Well, analyzing and clicking around this particular chart will give the user that information. So again, having a story to tell, understanding the relationships between visuals is really sort of key into here, and giving them the flow and the story to tell them throughout is really important as well. Okay, well, I think that's come to the end of this particular session. I hope that has given you some idea as to what can be done with Power BI, what can be done with a little bit of planning, a nice canvas, and breaking things down into simple formats. You can really create something that's really quite striking. And if you want to be notified about any new videos that I'll be creating, please click on the subscribe button and the little bell button. That'll let you know if anything comes up. Okay, thanks for joining me here. Hope to see you next time on the BI WizKid YouTube channel. #boom.